The sun hung low over Tulsa, casting long shadows across the cracked asphalt of the old industrial district. Dust devils swirled lazily in the heat, carrying the faint scent of rust and forgotten dreams. Behind the boarded-up shell of what used to be a grocery store, a thin teenage girl knelt in the alley, her fingers trembling as she rifled through a pile of overflowing trash bags. She was 15, all sharp angles and hollow cheeks, her clothes a patchwork of rags that barely shielded her from the evening chill. Hunger clawed at her insides, a constant companion these past months, but she pushed it down, focusing on the scraps. Half-rotten fruit, a discarded sandwich wrapper that might hide something edible. Her dark hair fell in tangled strands over her face, hiding eyes that had seen too much for someone so young. She didn't hear the low rumble at first, the growl of a motorcycle engine cutting through the quiet like a predator's warning. If you're just tuning in, hit that subscribe button and turn on notifications. Stories like this one don't wait, and neither should you. Ethan Grim Walker eased off the throttle, his battered Harley-Davidson purring to a stop at the alley's mouth. At 42, Grim was a road-worn force of nature, his leather vest patched with the emblem of the Iron Vow Riders, a clenched fist around a broken chain, symbolizing promises forged in fire. His face was a map of scars, the deepest one a jagged line across his jaw from a bar fight in '09 that nearly ended him. But it was the ghosts in his eyes that told the real story, the weight of a life built on loyalty and loss. He'd been riding these back streets for hours, chasing shadows from his past, when the sight hit him like a punch to the gut. The girl, digging, surviving on the scraps of a world that had already chewed her up. He killed the engine, the sudden silence amplifying the distant hum of traffic on the highway. Boots crunching on gravel, Grim swung his leg over the bike and approached slowly, his massive frame casting a shadow that swallowed the alley's dim light. She froze, her hand midway into a bag, those wide eyes locking onto him. Fear flickered there, raw and instinctive, but something else too, a spark of defiance that made his chest tighten. He stopped a few feet away, hands visible, palms up. "Easy," he murmured, voice gravelly from years of dust and unspoken regrets. "Ain't here to hurt you." She scrambled back against the brick wall, clutching a bruised apple like a weapon. Up close, she was even more fragile, her skin pale under the grime, wrists bony and marked by faint bruises that whispered of harder days. But it was the scar that stopped him cold, a thin, crescent-shaped mark on her left wrist, pale against the dirt. Grim's breath caught. He'd seen that scar before, made it himself in a moment of carelessness 7 years ago, when he'd been roughhousing with his little girl in the backyard. A slip of a pocket knife during a game of pretend warriors. Lily, his Lily. The name surged through him, a tidal wave crashing against the walls he'd built around his heart. Lily! The word escaped as a whisper, barely audible over the pounding of his pulse in his ears. Her eyes widened, searching his face, and in that instant, recognition dawned. It was wordless, electric, a mirror shattering after years in the dark. She dropped the apple, her lips parting in a gasp. "Dad!" It came out small, broken, like she'd been holding it in for too long. Tears welled up, carving clean tracks through the filth on her cheeks. Grim's knees buckled, he sank to the ground, the rough concrete biting into his jeans, but he didn't care. He reached out, slow, tentative, and she didn't pull away. Their fingers met, scarred wrist to calloused hand, and the world narrowed to that touch. 7 years. She'd been 6 when the fire took everything. Their home, her mother, and supposedly her. The official story was arson, a tragic accident, but Grim had always known better. Whispers in the club, shadows in the night. And now, here she was, alive. The alley seemed to close in, the air thick with the metallic tang of trash and the faint acrid bite of exhaust from his bike. Grim pulled her into his arms, careful, like she might vanish again. She was so light, so breakable, her body shaking against his chest. "How?" he choked out, the question hanging between them. Lily buried her face in his vest, the leather warm from the ride, smelling of oil and open road. "They said you were gone," she whispered, voice muffled. "The fire. I ran. Foster homes. They weren't safe." Her words tumbled out in fragments, each one a dagger to his soul. Abusive placements, narrow escapes, months on the streets hiding from men who asked too many questions. She'd learned to vanish, to become a ghost in a city that devoured the lost. Grim held her tighter, his mind racing. The Iron Vow Riders weren't just a club, they were his family, bound by oaths older than blood. He'd founded it after the war with brothers who'd shared foxholes and firestorms, promising to stand for the forgotten. And now this, his daughter, returned from the ashes. But joy twisted into something fiercer as pieces clicked. The fire hadn't been random. Whispers he dismissed as paranoia. Local cops turning blind eyes, a network preying on kids like Lily. Trafficking, hidden in plain sight, protected by badges and lies. Rage simmered in his veins, but he tamped it down. Not here, not yet. "You're safe now," he vowed, his voice steady as iron. "I promise, no one's taking you again." As the sky deepened to twilight, the first stars pricking through the haze, Grim stood, lifting Lily effortlessly onto his bike. She clung to him, arms wrapped around his waist, her head against his back. The engine roared to life, a thunderous declaration, vibrating through them both. They rode out of the alley, the wind whipping away the tears, carrying them toward the club's outpost on the edge of town, a sanctuary of roaring bikes and unbreakable bonds. But Grim knew this was just the beginning. The shadows that had stolen his daughter were still out there, woven into the fabric of the city. He'd tear it apart thread by thread, with his brothers at his side, for Lily, for the vow that had kept him alive all these years. The road stretched ahead, endless and unforgiving, but for the first time in 7 years, Grim felt whole. The promise he'd made to her mother on that smoke-choked night, protect our girl, burned brighter than ever, and he would keep it, no matter the cost. The rumble of Grim's Harley echoed off the rusted silos as they pulled into the Iron Vow Riders' outpost, a sprawling compound on Tulsa's frayed outskirts. Chain-link fences topped with barbed wire guarded the perimeter, but it was the bikes lined up like sentinels, 24 gleaming machines, each one a testament to miles logged and oaths sworn, that truly warded off the world. The air hung heavy, with the scent of charred wood from a recent bonfire pit, and the sharp tang of motor oil seeping from the workshop. Flickering floodlights cast stark pools of yellow across the gravel lot, where a few club members lounged around a weathered picnic table, nursing beers and swapping low murmurs under the deepening night. Grim cut the engine, the sudden quiet amplifying Lily's shallow breaths against his back. She hadn't let go since the alley, her grip a fragile anchor in the storm of their reunion. He dismounted first, turning to help her down, his calloused hands gentle on her waist. She wobbled on unsteady legs, eyes darting to the shadows, the faces emerging from the dimness. These weren't strangers to Grim. They were his brothers, men forged in the crucible of desert wars and desert roads, bound by the vow they'd etched in blood after coming home broken. Jax, the wiry sergeant-at-arms with a prosthetic leg from an IED blast, straightened first, his tattooed arms crossing over his chest. Beside him, Rook, the club's quiet mechanic, paused mid-wipe of a wrench, his grease-streaked face furrowing in concern. "Grim, the hell you doing riding in this late?" Jax called, his voice a gravel drawl honed by too many smokes and sunsets. But his words trailed off as he spotted Lily, the question dying on his lips. The others, Tank, a mountain of a man with a beard like tangled wire. Lena, the only woman in the inner circle, a former combat medic who'd patched more than wounds. gathered closer, their easy banter fading into a heavy silence. Lily shrank against Grim, her thin frame trembling, the alley's grime still clinging to her like a second skin. Grim met their gazes, his jaw set like forged steel. "This here's Lily," he said, the words simple but weighted, carrying the echo of 7 lost years. "My daughter. She's coming home." A ripple passed through the group. Nods, sharp intakes of breath. No one questioned it. The iron vow didn't traffic in doubts. Jack stepped forward, his limp barely noticeable on the even ground, and extended a hand, palm up. No sudden moves. "Welcome, kid. Name's Jax. You hungry?" Lily hesitated, her scarred wrist peeking from her sleeve as she clutched Grim's arm. But the offer pierced her wariness. She nodded faintly, and Lena was already moving, her practical boots crunching gravel toward the main bunkhouse. Inside, the outpost's heartbeat warm and lived in, exposed beams overhead, walls lined with faded photos of rides and remembrances, the faint hum of a generator underscoring it all. Lena bustled in the galley kitchen, pulling together a plate of stew from the communal pot. Thick venison chunks simmered with onions, steam rising in fragrant curls that cut through the chill. Lily perched on a stool at the scarred wooden counter, her eyes tracking every motion like a cornered animal. Grim sat beside her, his presence a steady wall, but he felt the fracture lines in her trust, thin as spider silk. "You don't have to talk yet," he murmured, his voice low, the scent of his leather vest mingling with the food's savory warmth. "But I'm listening when you do." She picked at the stew, spoon trembling, the first real bite bringing color to her cheeks. The club gave them space, retreating to the fire pit outside, their laughter a distant rumble like thunder on the horizon. But Lily's words came in fits, halting as the night pressed in. "After the fire, they said you were dead too, or gone. Foster places. The first one was okay, but then—" Her voice cracked, eyes dropping to the bowl. Grim's fist clenched under the counter, knuckles whitening. He knew the system's underbelly, the indifferent caseworkers, the homes that hid darker dealings. "Men came looking, said I had to go with them. I ran the second time, hid in alleys, stole what I could, thought you'd never find me." Grim's mind churned, piecing the fragments. The fire at their old place, a modest ranch house on the city's edge, had been ruled accidental, a faulty wire sparking dry timber, but he'd smelled the accelerant that night, faint under the smoke. As flames licked the sky and sirens wailed, Sarah, Lily's mother, had pushed her toward the window, screaming for Grim to get out. He'd fought back in, lungs burning, only to find the bedroom empty, the official report claiming both gone. Grief had hollowed him, driving him deeper into the club's rides, chasing redemption in the roar of engines. Now, Lily's survival cracked that narrative wide open. "Who were these men?" he asked, keeping his tone even, though rage simmered beneath. She shrugged, small shoulders hunching. "Badges sometimes, suits other times, said it was for protection, but their eyes—" Wrong. A chill slithered down Grim's spine, the pieces slotting into a grim mosaic. Whispers in Tulsa's underbelly spoke of a ring. Kids vanishing into the ether, funneled through corrupt channels disguised as aid. Local enforcers turning blind eyes for payoffs, the fire perhaps a cover to snatch the vulnerable. His vow to Sarah echoed, keep her safe. He'd failed once, blinded by his own demons after the war. Not again. Outside, the fire crackled, casting flickering shadows on the compound walls. Jax joined them quietly, sliding a worn jacket over Lily's shoulders, soft flannel smelling of pine and road dust. "We got your back, Grim," he said, eyes on the girl. "All of us. Vows iron for a reason." Lily looked up, the first flicker of something like hope in her gaze. The club was a patchwork family, veterans like Rook, who'd lost a brother to the streets, Lena, who'd walked away from a badge after seeing too much rot. They gathered orphans of circumstance, binding them with loyalty fiercer than blood. As the stew warmed her, Lily leaned into Grim, exhaustion pulling at her lids. He carried her to a spare bunk, the room sparse but clean, cot with fresh sheets, a window overlooking the star-pricked sky. Tucking her in, he brushed a strand of hair from her face, the scar on her wrist a silent accusation and absolution. "Sleep now," he whispered. "Tomorrow we start fixing this." But as he stepped out, joining his brothers by the fire, the weight settled heavier. The ring's tendrils reached deep, into precincts, into the mayor's backroom deals. Exposing it meant war, quiet and calculated, honoring the vow not with fists alone, but with unyielding truth. The flames danced, embers rising like lost souls, and Grim stared into them, resolve hardening. Lily's return wasn't chance, it was a reckoning. The iron vow would ride for justice, tearing through the lies until the light broke free. For her, for the promises that outlasted fire and forgetfulness. And now, I invite you to leave in the comments where you're watching from and the exact hour you heard this story. We wish to know how far these northern confessions travel and at what moments they reach you. Dawn broke over the Iron Vow outpost like a hesitant promise, pale light filtering through the chain-link fence and glinting off dew-kissed bikes. The air carried the crisp bite of morning grass, mixed with lingering smoke from the night's fire, a reminder of warmth amid the chill. Grim hadn't slept, his mind a whirlwind of fragmented memories and sharpening suspicions. He stood by the workshop, nursing a mug of black coffee that burned his tongue, watching as Rook tinkered with an old carburetor under the hood of a pickup. The rhythmic clink of tools against metal was a steady counterpoint to the unease gnawing at Grim's gut. Lily was still asleep in the bunkhouse, her breathing even for the first time in months, but safety felt fragile, like a thin sheet of ice over deep water. Jax limped over, his prosthetic clicking faintly on the gravel, a fresh pot of coffee in hand. "She settle okay?" he asked, pouring a cup without waiting for an invite. His eyes, sharp under bushy brows, scanned Grim's face for the unspoken. They'd been through too much together, sand-swept patrols in forgotten wars, barroom brawls that tested the vow, to need flowery words. Grim nodded, setting his mug down on a workbench scarred by years of repairs. "Yeah, but what she said last night, it don't sit right. Fire was no accident. And those men hunting her? Badges involved, Jax, I can feel it." The sergeant-at-arms rubbed his jaw, the stubble rasping under his fingers. He'd lost faith in uniforms long ago, after a stateside hero's welcome that left him scraping by on scraps. Heard murmurs myself. Tulsa's got holes in its underbelly, kids going missing, reports getting buried. Clubs got ears everywhere. Lena's got a contact in the old precinct off the books. He glanced toward the bunkhouse, where Lena emerged, her ponytail swinging as she carried a tray of breakfast, scrambled eggs flecked with herbs from the outpost's scrappy garden, toast golden and crisp. The scent wafted over, cutting through the oil and earth, pulling Grim back to simpler mornings, with Sarah flipping pancakes in their kitchen. Lily stirred as they entered, rubbing sleep from her eyes, the borrowed flannel jacket dwarfing her frame. She sat up, wary but less feral than the night before, accepting the plate with a quiet "thanks." The group settled around the counter, the wooden stools creaking under their weight, a makeshift council in the morning light. Tank loomed in the doorway, his massive arms crossed, while Rook wiped his hands on a rag and joined, the faint whir of the generator humming in the background. No one pushed. The iron vow thrived on patience earned, not demanded. As Lily ate, her words came slower, pieced together like a puzzle half buried in ash. The fire. I remember smoke first. Thick and black, choking everything. Mom pushed me out the window, said run to the neighbors, but sirens came quick, too quick. Then men in dark clothes, not firefighters. They grabbed me before I could scream. Her fork paused midway to her mouth, eyes distant, fixed on a knot in the wood. Grim's hand covered hers, steadying the tremor, the scar on her wrist a pale echo of that night. Foster system took me after. First home was rough, yelling, bruises that faded but left marks inside. Second one, a lady there whispered about placements for extra cash. I overheard calls, names I didn't know. Then those men showed up again, saying I matched a description. I slipped out a back door, hid in a storm drain for days. The room grew still. The only sound, the distant call of a crow wheeling overhead. Lena leaned forward, her medic's gaze assessing not just the words, but the shadows behind them. Sounds like a pipeline. We've seen it before. Vulnerable kids funneled out, sold as labor, or worse, covered by folks who should protect them. Her voice was even, but anger simmered there. Born from cases she'd stitched up in ERs, turned away from the truth. Grim's mind raced, connecting dots to old club intel, a string of arsons in low-income neighborhoods, all ruled accidental, all leaving orphans in the system's grasp. Their house had been one of the first, a test run perhaps to perfect the cover. "We dig," Grim said finally, his tone brooking no argument. The vow pulsed in his veins. Protect the forgotten, honor the lost. "Rook, pull records from the old warehouse district. Anything on that grocery spot where I found her. Jax, reach out to your street contacts. Quiet-like. No waves till we know the players." Nods rippled around the table, a silent pact sealing tighter than any oath. Lily watched them, her initial fear softening into something tentative, like trust taking root in barren soil. "You really gonna fight this? For me?" she asked, voice small against the weight of the question. Grim met her eyes, the morning sun catching the lines etched deep in his face. "Promised your mom I'd keep you safe. Failed once, blinded by my own ghosts. Won't happen again. This club's family, chosen, not given. We ride together, fall together." She swallowed, nodding, the first real spark of belief lighting her gaze. Outside, engines coughed to life as Tank fired up the pickup, ready for a recon run to the city's edge. The compound buzzed with purpose, bikes gleaming under the rising sun, exhaust curling like resolve made visible. But as the morning unfolded, tension coiled tighter. Lena's phone buzzed on the counter, a burner kept for shadows. She glanced at the screen, face hardening. "Contact from the precinct. Says there's chatter. Someone reported a runaway spotted with bikers last night. They're coming sniffing." Grim's jaw tightened, the coffee turning bitter in his mouth. The ring's reach was longer than he'd feared, tendrils snaking through dispatch logs and tip lines. No time for subtlety now. Protection meant action. "Get Lily secure in the back room. Double the watch." He stood, pulling on his riding gloves, the leather creaking like old bones awakening. Lily reached for him, fingers brushing his arm. "Dad, what if they find us?" The word "Dad" hung there, a bridge across the years, fragile but real. He knelt, level with her, the scent of eggs and earth grounding them. "Then we stand. Honor ain't loud. It's the quiet choice when everything screams run. You're worth it, all of it." She nodded, clinging a moment longer before Lena led her away, the door clicking shut like a vow sealed. Grim stepped into the yard, the sun climbing higher, casting stark shadows across the lot. His brothers mounted up, engines roaring in unison, a thunderous chorus against the gathering storm. The road called, not for escape, but confrontation. Whispers of corruption would turn to shouts, the iron vow's justice a blade honed by loss. Lily's return had ignited it all, a fire not of destruction, but rebirth. And Grim would see it burn true, for the promises that bound them, unbreakable as the horizon. The gravel crunched under the tires of the Iron Vow's pickup as it rumbled out of the compound, kicking up dust that hung in the midday sun like a veil of secrets. Grim rode shotgun, his leather-gloved hands gripping the door handle, the wind through the cracked window whipping strands of grey at his temples. Jax drove, his focus sharp on the rear view, while Rook and Tank followed in a tailing bike convoy, engines growling low to blend with the city's hum. The air inside the cab was thick with the scent of stale coffee and gun oil, a reminder that this recon wasn't just a ride. It was a hunt, quiet and deliberate, for the threads tying Lily's nightmare to Tulsa's rotten core. They headed for the warehouse district, a labyrinth of sagging metal buildings and forgotten rail spurs on the city's industrial fringe. The sun beat down mercilessly, turning the asphalt into a shimmering haze, the distant wail of a train whistle underscoring the isolation. Grimm's mind replayed Lily's words from breakfast, the men in dark clothes, the too quick sirens, like echoes in a canyon, growing louder with each mile. He'd promised Sarah more than safety. He'd vowed justice, a word that in the club's code meant exposing the darkness without becoming it. But as the warehouses loomed, their corrugated walls scarred by rust and graffiti, doubt flickered. What if the ring's protectors were deeper than he feared? Judges, councilmen, the very pillars propping up the facade of order. Jax eased the truck to a stop behind a derelict loading dock, the engine ticking as it cooled. "This the spot near the old grocery?" Rook said the alley backs onto these sheds, prime for hiding comings and goings. Grimm nodded, scanning the chain-link perimeter topped with faded no trespassing signs that meant nothing to men who'd stared down worse. The air here carried a stale rot, like damp cardboard mixed with the faint chemical bite of something illicit. Discarded barrels, perhaps, or worse. They dismounted silently, boots soft on the cracked concrete, the club's training from overseas kicking in, move like shadows, listen for the lies in the silence. Rook led the way, his mechanic's eye spotting the weak point, a section of fence pried just enough to slip through. Inside, the warehouse yard was a graveyard of forgotten crates, weeds thrusting through fissures like defiant fingers. Tank's bulk cleared a path, his breath steady, while Jax hung back, eyes on the access road. Grimm's pulse thrummed, a low drumbeat as they approached the main building. A side door hung ajar, its lock long picked or forced, and from within came the muffled scrape of movement. Rats. Or something human. They eased inside, the dim interior swallowing them in gloom, pierced by shafts of light through broken windows. Dust motes danced in the beams, illuminating stacks of pallets and shadowed corners that smelled of mildew and neglect. Grimm's hand hovered near his belt, not for the knife there, but for the small recorder Jax had slipped him. A tool for truth, not vengeance. "Fan out," he whispered, voice barely cutting the hush, eyes open, mouths shut. It was Rook who found it first, in a back office cluttered with yellowed files and a desk buried under coffee rings. He flipped on a penlight, the beam catching a ledger half hidden under a stack of invoices, names, dates, cryptic notations like transfer lot 17 and clearance pending. Grimm leaned in, the paper crackling under his fingers, the ink faded but legible. Children's names, some crossed out, others marked with arrows pointing to out-of-state addresses. Lily's wasn't there, but an entry from 7 years back jumped out. Incident, residential, 3 souls, 1 secured. His blood ran cold, the scar on his jaw tightening as rage clawed up his throat. The fire, their home, secured, not lost, but taken. "Grimm!" Jax hissed from the doorway, his face pale under the grime. Outside, tires crunched, slow, deliberate. A black sedan pulled up, unmarked, 2 figures stepping out in crisp suits that screamed authority without the badge. One was tall, broad-shouldered, the other wiry with a clipboard. They moved with the casual arrogance of men who owned the shadows. "Company!" Jax added, urgency threading his drawl. The club melted back, hearts pounding in sync, but Grimm's feet rooted. This was the face of the corruption, suits covering the hands that snatched kids from flames. They slipped out a rear exit, crouching behind a rusted dumpster as the men entered the warehouse, voices carried low and clipped. Another shipment tomorrow. Keep the reports clean. That biker sighting last night has the chief twitchy. The words landed like blows, confirming the rot. Local brass involved, burying trails for profit. Grimm's fists clenched, the recorder burning in his pocket like a live coal. Expose them now, and the club became targets. Wait, and Lily stayed in the crosshairs. The moral knife twisted, justice demanded patience, but his vow screamed action. The suits emerged minutes later, scanning the yard before driving off, exhaust trailing like a serpent's tail. The iron vow regrouped in the truck, the ledger clutched in Rook's lap, its pages a map to hell. "We got proof," Grimm said, starting the engine with a roar that shattered the quiet. "But it's a fuse. Light it wrong and it burns us all." Jax nodded, rubbing his prosthetic knee absently. "Back to the outpost. Show Lena she can cross-check with her sources. Then we decide quiet pressure or full ride." The convoy tore back through the district, the sun dipping toward afternoon, casting elongated shadows that chased them like pursuers. Grimm's thoughts turned to Lily, safe for now in the bunkhouse, perhaps sketching on a scrap of paper Lena had given her, a small act of normalcy in the storm. Trust was rebuilding, brick by fragile brick. Her hand in his at breakfast, the way she'd called him Dad, without flinching. But this evidence shifted everything. The ring wasn't faceless. It had names, ties to power. Confronting it meant risking the family he'd forged, the vows that held them. Yet walking away, that was surrender, a betrayal of the quiet honor that defined them. As the outpost gates loomed, the pickup slowing to a gravel spray, Grimm felt the weight settle deeper. Lily waited inside, her eyes lighting as he entered, the ledger tucked under his arm like a loaded gun. "Find anything?" she asked, voice steadying, the borrowed jacket a shield around her shoulders. He knelt, meeting her gaze, the scent of stew from lunch lingering in the air. "Enough to start the fight, but it's your call too, what we do next." She searched his face, the scar on her wrist catching the light, a bond forged in accident and survival. For the first time, fear gave way to resolve in her eyes. Make them pay. For Mom. For all of us. The club gathered in the main room. The ledger spread on the counter like a declaration of war. Lena pored over it, her medic's precision noting patterns, dates aligning with missing kids' reports, routes snaking toward border towns. Tank stood guard at the window, his silhouette a bulwark against the fading day. Jax lit a smoke, the cherry glowing like a beacon. "We ride smart," Grimm said, his voice ironclad. "Gather more. Then hit 'em where it hurts." The truth broadcast loud. Nods circled the room, the vow pulsing alive, a family chosen in the crucible of now. Outside the bikes idled, ready for the next move, the horizon bruising purple with twilight's approach. Lily's hand found Grimm's, small but sure, and in that touch redemption stirred, not loud, but profound, a promise rising from the ashes to claim its due. If this tale of hidden truths and unbreakable bonds has you hooked, smash that like button. It helps these stories reach more ears in need of light in the dark. The twilight deepened over the Iron Vow outpost, painting the compound in strokes of indigo and fading gold. The air, cooling with the sharp scent of impending rain, carried on a restless wind. Inside the main room, the ledger lay open on the scarred counter, its pages illuminated by a single hanging bulb that swung gently, casting wavering shadows across the gathered faces. Grimm stood at the head, his broad shoulders squared, the weight of the day's discoveries pressing like an unseen hand on his chest. Lily sat beside him, her small frame perched on a stool, fingers tracing the edge of the table as if grounding herself in the wood's rough grain. The club's inner circle encircled them, Jax leaning against the wall, smoke curling from his cigarette. Lena flipping through her notebook of contacts, her pen scratching notes, Rook and Tank flanking the door, silent sentinels with eyes that had seen too many battles won and lost. "We hit the warehouse clean," Grim began, his voice a low rumble that cut through the hum of the generator outside. "Ledger's got names, roots, ties straight to the fire that took everything, but it's a start, not the end. These snakes got layers, precinct whispers, backroom deals. We peel 'em slow or they strike first." He glanced at Lily, her eyes reflecting the light like polished stones, hardened by survival but flickering with the raw edge of hope. She'd changed since the alley. Less ghost, more presence, her voice gaining strength in the safety of these walls. The borrowed flannel hung loose on her, smelling faintly of Lena's herbal soap, a small armor against the world's bite. Lena looked up, her face etched with the quiet fury of someone who'd bandaged the fallout of such schemes. Cross-checked the dates, matches a cluster of accidents, fires, wrecks, all leaving kids unclaimed. My old precinct source confirms, tips get rerouted, files vanish. The chief's office, untouchable, or so they think. She tapped a circled name in the ledger, Councilman Hale, a fixture in Tulsa's power plays, his photo in faded news clippings pinned to the wall. Jax exhaled a plume of smoke, the acrid tang mingling with the stew's remnants from dinner. Hale's got pull, donates to cop charities, schmoozes the mayor. But streets say he's the funnel, kids to farms out west, labor disguised as adoption. We rattle him, the whole nest buzzes. Lily shifted, her scarred wrist catching the light, a silent reminder of the cost. One name. In the Foster files they showed me once, Hale's foundation-sponsored placements, said it was help. Her words hung heavy, laced with the betrayal of systems meant to shield. Grim's hand found her shoulder, a steady pressure, the leather of his glove creaking softly. He'd failed her once, lost in the haze of war scars and grief, but this vow, to Sarah, to Lily, to the club, anchored him now. "We don't charge blind," he said. "Tomorrow, Rook and Tank scout Hale's office downtown. Night run, cameras only. Jax, lean on your network for dirt. Lena, keep Lily close. Teach her the ropes if she wants." Nods rippled, the pact unspoken but ironclad, forged in the fires of shared loss. As the group dispersed, the outpost settling into night's rhythm, boots on gravel, the distant whine of a bike tune-up, Grim led Lily to the fire pit, now banked embers glowing like buried coals. The air nipped cooler, stars pricking the velvet sky, the faint patter of rain starting on the tin roof of the bunkhouse. She huddled in the flannel, knees drawn up, staring into the low flames. "You think Mom knew about any of this?" Her question sliced the quiet, vulnerable, probing the wound that never fully scarred. Grim poked the fire with a stick, sparks rising in lazy spirals, carrying the woody smoke that stung his eyes. Sarah was light in the dark, saw the good, fought for it. If she suspected, she'd have burned it down herself. Memories flooded, her laugh echoing in their old kitchen, hands flour-dusted from bread, Lily giggling at her feet. The fire had stolen that, or so the lie went. Now, truth clawed back, demanding reckoning. "This ain't just for us," he added, voice gravel-soft. "Clubs lost kin to shadows like these. Rook's nephew vanished years back. We're the wall they can't breach." Lily nodded, raindrops hissing on the embers, her face illuminated in flickers. Trust bloomed tentative between them, built on shared silences and small truths. Her teaching him the street signs she'd learned to evade pursuit, him sharing tales of desert rides that tested the soul. But doubt lingered, a psychological thorn. Could he shield her without dragging the club into the abyss? The vow demanded integrity, not recklessness. Justice through exposure, not blood. Yet as thunder rumbled distant, Mirroring the storm in his chest, Grim felt the pull of sacrifice, the quiet honor of standing firm. Midnight found the outpost hushed, rain sheeting down in silver curtains that drummed on the roof like impatient fingers. Grim couldn't sleep, pacing the workshop, the scent of wet earth and oil grounding him. Jax joined him, limping in from a perimeter check, water dripping from his jacket. Perimeters tight, no tails. But his eyes held warning. Heard from a runner. Hale's got ears too. Words out on a biker harboring a runaway. They're circling. Grim's jaw tightened, the scar pulling taut. Ethical lines blurred. Protect Lily by hiding, or expose the rot and risk all. The club's family, chosen through foxholes and flat tires, deserved no less than his full measure. We accelerate, Dawn ride to Hales, recon only, get faces, plates, then Lena leaks to a clean reporter. Jax clapped his shoulder, the bond wordless, loyalty a current stronger than the storm. In the bunkhouse, Lily stirred under her blanket, dreams tangled with flames and faces. Lena sat vigil nearby, a cup of tea steaming in her hands, the herbal steam curling like whispered assurances. "You're safe here," she murmured as Lily's eyes fluttered open. "Family's more than blood. It's the ones who stay." Lily reached out, fingers brushing Lena's, a fragile thread weaving her into the fold. Redemption whispered in that touch. Personal scars mending through collective strength. Dawn crept in grey and sodden, the rain easing to a mist that beaded on bike chrome like tears unshed. The convoy assembled, 5 riders, engines idling low, exhaust mingling with the damp air. Grim mounted his Harley, Lily watching from the porch, her resolve a quiet fire. "Be careful," she called, voice carrying over the rumble. He nodded, helmet shadowing his eyes, the vow etched deeper, for her, for the lost, against the corruption that preyed on the vulnerable. They rolled out, tires slicing through puddles that mirrored the overcast sky, the city awakening in blurred halos. Hale's office loomed in the civic district, a squat brick building with flags snapping in the breeze, facade of order hiding the venom within. The teams split. Rook and Tank circling the lot, cameras clicking silent shots of incoming sedans. Jax and Grim posted across the street, blending into a coffee shop's steam-fogged window. The air inside carried the bitter roast of brew and fried dough, a mundane veil for their watch. It didn't take long. A familiar sedan pulled up, the same from the warehouse, disgorging the suits. But this time, a third figure emerged. Councilman Hale himself, silver-haired and sharp-suited, barking orders to a nervous aide. His laugh cut the morning, hollow as he scanned the street. Grim's blood iced, recognition hit, not from photos, but instinct. This man, with hands clean by day, had orchestrated the snatch from flames. The recorder whirred in his pocket, capturing fragments. "Tighten the net on that girl. No loose ends." They pulled back before eyes turned, the ride home a blur of wet roads and churning thoughts. At the outpost, the mist lifting to reveal a sun breaking through, Grim gathered the proof. Photos, audio, spreading it like a battle map. Lily joined, her presence bolstering the circle, the family's chosen bonds tightening against the gathering dark. "We end this," Grim declared, voice steady as the horizon. "Truth as our weapon, honor our shield." The club murmured agreement, engines ready beyond the walls, the promise of justice rising, poetic and unyielding from the depths of betrayal. Suspense coiled as the day wore on, calls incoming, Jax's contacts confirming Hale's next meeting at a riverside warehouse. The moral dilemma peaked. Infiltrate for irrefutable evidence, or go public now and invite retaliation. Grim chose the edge, the quiet courage of precision over chaos. As evening fell, the rain returning in soft sheets, Lily stood with him by the fire pit reignited, flames dancing defiance. "I'm with you," she said, hand in his, the scar a testament to survival. Redemption wasn't a solitary path. It was this: family forged in fire, loyalty the light-piercing corruption's veil. The iron vow would ride into the storm, upholding the oaths that outlasted all. The rain-slicked roads gleamed under the outpost's floodlights as the iron vow riders assembled in the deepening dusk, their bikes forming a ragged line like hounds, leashed but straining. The air hung heavy with the petrichor of wet earth and the oily tang of revving engines, a prelude to the storm they were about to unleash. Grim adjusted his helmet strap, the leather cool against his stubbled neck, his eyes locking on Lily one last time from the porch. She stood there, arms wrapped around herself in the oversized flannel, the mist beading on her lashes like unshed resolve. "Stay sharp," she said, her voice cutting through the low growl of idling Harleys, a far cry from the alley's whisper. He'd taught her that phrase over the past days, simple, loaded with the club's creed. He nodded, the scar on his jaw pulling tight. "Won't be long. Lena's got you covered." Inside, the moral scales tipped heavier. Infiltrate Hale's riverside meet for the kill shot evidence, or pull back and risk the ring closing in. The ledger and recordings were damning, but incomplete. Without faces tied to the final handover, the truth might slither free on technicalities. Justice demanded more, the quiet kind that dismantled empires from within, honoring the vow without descending to their level. Grim mounted up, the saddle creaking under his weight, and the convoy peeled out, tires hissing on puddles that mirrored the bruised sky. The Riverside Warehouse District sprawled along Tulsa's Forgotten Bend, where the Arkansas River murmured dark secrets against concrete pilings, its waters swollen from the downpour. Sodium lamps cast jaundiced pools across the loading bays, illuminating stacks of shipping containers like rusted tombs. The club split seamlessly. Grim and Jax on foot through the shadows, Rook and Tank circling wide on bikes silenced to a purr. Lena holding the outpost with Lily, relaying via encrypted radios that crackled faintly in Grim's earpiece. The wind off the water carried a briny chill, laced with the faint rot of driftwood and diesel, sharpening every sense as they approached the target. A low-slung building with boarded windows and a single floodlit door, Hale's neutral ground for deals that never saw daylight. They slipped through a chain-link gap, boots silent on the spongy gravel, hearts sinking to the distant lap of waves. Jax's limp was a ghost in the dark, his prosthetic whispering against the ground. 2 blocks out. "Sedans incoming," he murmured, breath fogging in the cold. Grim's pulse thrummed, the recorder heavy in his vest pocket, a talisman of restraint. This wasn't about fists or fury. It was the ethical tightrope. Capture the exchange, expose the corruption's heart, protect the forgotten without becoming monsters. Memories flickered, Sarah's hand in his on their wedding day, promising a life beyond the war's scars. Lily's tiny fingers, tracing his tattoos as a toddler, calling them warrior marks. Those oaths pulled him forward, redemption afire, banked but burning. Inside the perimeter, they crouched behind a pallet of corroded drums, the metal cold and slick under Grim's gloves. Headlights sliced the night as 3 vehicles arrived, Hale's black sedan foremost, flanked by unmarked SUVs. Doors thudded open, spilling figures into the light. The councilman, his silver hair gleaming unnaturally, gesturing sharply to the suits from the warehouse run. A third man emerged from the shadows, burly and hooded, dragging a chain that clinked ominously. Linked to what? Grim couldn't see yet, but the implication twisted his gut. Voices carried, fragmented by the wind. "Final lot clears tonight. Girl from the old fire's a loose end. Find her, or the bikers pay." Hale's tone was silk over steel, arrogance dripping like the rain from the eaves. Grim's breath caught, rage coiling like a spring, but Jax's hand on his arm steadied him, the vow's silent code: observe, endure. They crept closer, edging along the wall where graffiti peeled in the damp, the air thickening with the acrid bite of cigarette smoke from the group. Rook's voice buzzed in the earpiece. Thermal shows 4 inside, heat signatures small, kids. The word landed like a blow, confirming the pipeline's cruelty. Vulnerable souls funneled through aid networks, vanished into labor shadows or worse, all under the guise of protection. Grimm's mind raced to Lily, safe miles away. But the parallel scarred deep. Her escape from that very web, the fire's accident, a deliberate theft. A door creaked open from within, and the hooded man hauled his chain forward, revealing 2 figures stumbling into the light. Teenagers, no older than Lily, their clothes ragged, eyes hollow with the terror of the long-hunted. No cries escaped. Fear had schooled them silent, but their trembling forms screamed volumes. Hale inspected them like merchandise, clipboard in hand, murmuring approvals to the suits. Prime for relocation. Hale Foundation stamps it clean. The recorder captured it all. Audio gold laced with the river's murmur and the chain's rattle. Evidence that would shatter the facade if they survived to wield it. But the night fractured then. A twig snapped under Jax's boot, too loud in the hush. Heads turned, the burly man drawing a sidearm with a metallic snick that echoed off the water. "Who's there?" Hale barked, his polished veneer cracking. The club moved as one. Grimm lunged for cover behind a container, Jax diving opposite, while Rook and Tank gunned engines from afar. A diversionary roar splitting the air. Shots cracked, wild, warning bursts that pinged off metal, the acrid sting of gunpowder blooming in the rain. Grimm's heart hammered, the ethical dam breaking just enough to act. He fired back, not to kill, but to shield, bullets chewing gravel near the kid's feet to scatter the guards. Chaos erupted, suits scrambling to vehicles. Hale vanishing into the sedan with a squeal of tires. The hooded man bolted, chain dragging forgotten in his wake, leaving the teens frozen in the floodlight's glare. Grimm broke cover, waving them toward the shadows. "Run! Follow the river north!" He growled, urgency raw in his throat. They hesitated, then fled, silhouettes melting into the night, a small victory amid the peril. Jax joined him, nursing a graze on his arm, blood dark against his sleeve. "Got the audio, and faces on cam, but they're onto us now. Full alert." The convoy regrouped on the outskirts, rain sheeting harder, washing the tension from their frames, but not the fire in their eyes. Back at the outpost, the gates clanged shut behind them, the compound a beacon in the storm. Lily rushed out, Lena close, her face paling at the blood, but lighting with relief as Grimm pulled her into a fierce hug. The wet leather of his vest soaked through her flannel. But she clung, the scarred wrist pressing against his back, a bond reforged in the night's forge. "You okay?" she whispered, pulling back to search his face, the rain tracing paths down her cheeks. "Better than them," Grimm replied, voice gravel-worn. Leading her inside where the club waited, steam rising from mugs of hot coffee that cut the chill. The recorder played back snippets, voices damning in the warm lamplight, the ledger now augmented with timestamps and plates. Lena patched Jax's wound, her hands steady as she murmured, "This ties Hale direct. Foundation docs, the transfers. Leak it right, and the feds bite." But doubt shadowed the triumph. Retaliation loomed, the ring's tendrils coiling for a strike. Grimm knelt before Lily, the fire pit's embers hissing nearby, the scent of wet wood and resolve filling the air. "Your choice in this, kid. We go public tomorrow. Press, whoever listens clean, or we hold, build, ironclad." She met his gaze, the girl from the trash now a spark in the family's core. Public. For the others still out there, Mom would have wanted that, truth over hiding. Her words sealed it, redemption threading through the pain, the chosen kin around them nodding in quiet accord. Tank rumbled approval from the doorway, Rook already queuing files on a laptop's glow. The vow expanded, encompassing not just survival, but the poetic justice of light piercing the veil, honor as the legacy, sacrifice the price willingly paid. Outside, the storm raged on, thunder rolling like distant engines, but within the outpost, unity burned steady. Grim felt the ghost's ease, Sarah's promise fulfilled in this moment: protect, expose, endure. The ring would fall, not in blaze, but in the unyielding dawn of truth. The Iron Vow's ride far from over, yet as sirens wailed faint in the city, a harbinger, Grim knew the final stand approached. Loyalty tested, family unbreakable, the moral fire they carried destined to consume the dark. The sirens wailed closer in the pre-dawn hush, slicing through the rain's relentless drum on the outpost roof like a predator's cry. Inside the main room, the Iron Vow riders moved with the precision of men who'd faced worse than badges in the night, shadows lengthening under the hanging bulb, coffee mugs steaming forgotten on the counter. Grim stood at the window, his silhouette framed against the storm-lashed panes, the scent of damp leather and gun oil clinging to him like a second skin. Lily hovered near the door, her scarred wrist peeking from the flannel sleeve, eyes wide but steady, the girl's fragility yielding to a quiet steel forged in the club's fire. "They're here," Jax muttered, peering through the blinds, his prosthetic leg shifting with a faint click. The graze on his arm was bandaged tight, a red bloom under Lena's work, but pain didn't slow him. Outside, red and blue lights pulsed across the gravel lot, 3 cruisers pulling up short of the gates, their engines cutting to a growl. No ram, this was a probe, the ring testing waters before diving deep. Grim's jaw set, the vow thrumming in his veins. Protect the forgotten, not with barrels blazing, but truth's unyielding blade. The evidence burned in his pocket, audio crisp with Hale's voice. Photos time-stamped like accusations, the ledger a map to the rot. "Stay back," Grim said to Lily, his voice low gravel, turning to cup her face in calloused hands. The touch lingered, a bridge across 7 stolen years, her skin warm against the chill seeping through the walls. "This ends tonight, for you, for Sarah." She nodded, swallowing hard, the rain's patter underscoring her whisper. "Make it right, Dad." Lena guided her to the back room, the door latching soft as a promise, while Rook cued the files on his laptop, its screen glow casting blue hollows on his grease-streaked face. The knock came heavy on the gate, fists not battering but insistent. Tank lumbered forward, his bulk filling the doorway as he swung it open just enough. "Official business." La voice barked from the dark flashlight beams cutting like knives. 2 officers stepped into the light, rain sheeting off their slickers, the taller one, badge glinting, scanning the lot with eyes that held no warmth. "Reports of a disturbance. Runaway in your custody. Hand her over, no trouble." Behind them, shadows shifted, unmarked cars idling, Hale's influence woven into the dispatch call. Grim emerged, boots crunching wet gravel, his brothers fanning out subtle, Jax at his flank, Rook and Tank, a wall of quiet menace. The air hung thick with ozone and tension, the river's distant rush, a mocking underscore. "No runaways here," Grim replied, even-toned, hands visible but fists ready beneath the vow's restraint. "Just family. But if you're fishing for Hale's dirt, we got plenty." He pulled the recorder, thumbing play, the audio spilling out, Hale's silk-steel words fracturing the night. "Final lot clears tonight. Girl from the old fire's a loose end." The officer's face tightened, beam jerking to the device, but the shift was electric, hesitation in his stance, a glance to his partner. Not all badges bent, some cracked under truth's weight. "Turn that off," he snapped, but the damage bloomed, brothers murmuring low, phones slipping out to capture the standoff. Jax leaned in, drawl cutting sharp. "Chief knows, or he will by morning. Your call, back off, or history gets made." The rain intensified, drumming on hoods like impatient fingers, washing the standoff clean. Sirens swelled again, but not reinforcements. A news van creaking into view. tires sluicing puddles, its logo stark under the lights. Lena's leak had landed. A clean reporter, tipped from her old precinct ties, barreling through the storm for the scoop. Cameras flared, questions flying as the cruiser doors slammed. Officers retreating, faces pale, masks in the flash. "This ain't over," the lead growled, but his eyes darted, the ring's arrogance fracturing. The convoy peeled out, tail lights blurring into the mist, leaving the outpost breathing, unbroken. Dawn broke hesitant, the rain easing to a drizzle that silvered the bikes lined like guardians. Inside, the club gathered around the counter. The ledger and recorder splayed like trophies, steam from fresh coffee curling in the warming air. Lily emerged, Lena at her side, her steps surer, the flannel a badge of belonging now. The reporter had stayed, notebook filling with details. Lily's story, the fire's lie, Hale's funnel of lost souls into shadows. "It'll run statewide," she promised, voice steady over the clink of mugs. Feds already circling, anonymous tip lines lighting up. Grim watched Lily, the morning light catching her profile, so like Sarah's, resilient, unbroken. The scar on her wrist gleamed faint, a mark not of loss but survival's seal. "You did it," she said, slipping her hand into his, the small gesture profound, weaving her into the family's core. Jax clapped Grim's shoulder, the bond wordless, while Rook and Tank shared a nod, the chosen kin tighter than blood. Redemption washed over him, not in thunder but this quiet tide. Promises kept, honor's legacy etched in the light breaking through. Words spread like wildfire through Tulsa's veins, headlines screaming exposure, Hale's office raided by dawn's end, suits scattering like roaches. The ring unraveled, threads pulled by truth's hand. Kids recovered from hidden holds, foster shadows pierced, no blaze of glory, but poetic justice, the corrupt fallen not by force, but the unyielding stand of the overlooked. Grim rode out that afternoon, Lily behind him on the Harley, wind whipping her hair, the engine's roar a hymn to rebirth. The road stretched endless, horizons calling, but the vow held, family chosen, loyalty eternal, the ghosts laid to rest in the dust they left behind. As the sun climbed, gilding the asphalt, Grim felt whole, the weight lifted. Sarah's whisper in the breeze, "You kept it, for Lily, for all. Thanks for riding this journey with us. These tales of grit, honor, and unbreakable bonds wouldn't be the same without you." If stories like Grim and Lily's stir something deep, hit that subscribe button, turn on notifications, and join the Iron Vow for more chapters of redemption on the road. Your support keeps the engine roaring.